I would like to stay within Africa, but move up to the jungles of the Congo and introduce somebody who I'm incredibly inspired by. Dr. Jay Rayner has been working for the last 17 years in bonobo conservation and working tirelessly in an extremely challenging environment to ensure that there's a future for these amazing apes. When she was involved in the zoo industry 20 years ago, she started hearing more and more about bonobos in the rainforests of Africa. And she was tasked with setting up a conservation monitoring system for their populations. And yeah, I mean, she showed incredible bravery. At that time, she went over to what was currently the war-torn Congo, and as a woman, just showed so much strength in going to the jungles and working with the communities and partnering with the government to set up this really effective conservation program. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Jay Rayner.
Hello again. That was a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much. I would like to dedicate this talk today to a longtime friend of WCN. This is the late Mary Boardman, and thank her family, Lance Williams and Kitty Williams, for their generous support to the program that I'm going to talk about today, which is the Bonobo and Congo Biodiversity Initiative. As Rebecca said, we've been there for, I think since 1997. You do the math and tell me what the answer is. But this program is in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I work for the Zoological Society of Milwaukee. I would like to tell you today a little bit about the bonobo. I'm going to try to cram a lot of information in this talk, and because I'd like for you to know there are some results out there. I've talked a couple of times at WCN, and I'd like to be able to share with you some of the progress that we've made since the last time I was here about four years ago. So this highlighted here is the country of Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. This red line is the range, or the historic range of the chimpanzee. This is a sister species of the bonobo. The bonobo is found in this central part of DRC, or the Congo, and it's separated by the Congo River. So chimpanzees and bonobos live side by side and separated by the Congo River. So the bonobo is localized in the Congo. Whatever happens to the Congo will determine the fate of the bonobo. Both species occur in the Congo. Both species are endangered. You can see distinctive physical differences between the chimpanzee and the bonobo. The chimpanzee being more robust in build, heavier facial features. The bonobo more narrow, gracile in build, darker pigmentation, and longer arms. The bonobo inhabits a vast and relatively intact forest ecosystem, rainforest ecosystem that's found in the central Congo basin. Bonobos live in large numbers, can live in large numbers, large communities composed of both males and females. And they are said to be more peaceful than the chimpanzee. They encounter less combat, and they have lower male dominance. So how can that possibly be? They offer a model of peacefulness. Well, they had a great idea: sex. They use sex to dissipate social tension. And bonobos sex has evolved in bonobos to be now more of a social function and less of a wholly reproductive function. Bonobos also show a greater degree of homosexual activities and homosexual encounters. These two females who are embraced with this behavior. They form very strong social bonds. And two females are a formidable force in bonobo society, and it helps reduce then this male dominance. But all the sex and the social structure aside, what I'd like to tell you and leave with you today is the incredible cognitive abilities of the bonobo. This is the bonobo who lives in a sanctuary called Lola Ya Bonobo, a very important place. It'll come up later. Her name is Miss Cece. She has a human caregiver. And one day this human caregiver started to kind of snooze, and Miss Cece went over there and plucked the pink crock here from her human caregiver. What did Miss Cece do with that? She didn't rip it up. She didn't bite it. She didn't throw it over her shoulder. She put it on her foot. She put it on the correct foot, and she wore it the rest of the day. This takes an incredibly highly developed sense of self-identity. And we often say, well, the bonobo, they're so much like us. I mean, look at that. Look at how the bonobo is like that. Miss Cece is telling us, I know that you're very much like me. And if you think a shoe is an accident, a worker forgets his shovel inside the enclosure. Maya finds the shovel 2 days later and starts to dig in the stream bed. Now there's something going on here. I don't believe there's another creature in this conference who's going to have this kind of aptitude. This is a bonobo. Bonobos are threatened today because of loss of habitat from logging, as well as extensive slash and burn. And this vast forest that they live in is not empty. It's occupied also by one of the fastest growing human populations in Central Africa. They live at a subsistence level. About 40 to 50% of the meat that they consume comes from the meat of wild animals. Bonobos are also hunted in parts of their range for food, and the small ones often are kept alive and they're sold in the black market and the animal trade or the pet trade. This little female was fortunate because she found refuge at Lola Ya Bonobo. The greatest harm to wildlife comes from civil war and civil unrest. And as many of you may know, Congo suffered a 4-year-long civil war. 4 million people estimated perished. And the lasting effect, though, from this war was the enormous influx of military kinds of weapons. They were once used in a war against people. Now these weapons are used in a war against wildlife. And I really cannot overstate that. Guns are still a big business today. We don't know with precision how many bonobos are left in the wild. Estimates run from about 20 to 30,000. And that's our job. Our job is to find these populations, and when we find them, to protect them. And this is how I got involved in bonobo conservation. This is the outline of the country again, of the Congo, the range of the chimpanzee, and in the center of this range you see these rust-colored blocks there. That is the Solana National Park. It's a national park, a huge national park, 3 to 4 times larger than Yellowstone, and it was potentially the largest protected bonobo habitat in the world. But oddly, in 1997, when I first began, scientists just assumed that bonobos didn't really exist there. So this was our first job, was to try to find bonobos in the Solana National Park. Our first destination was a place called Itate. In 2000, it looked like this. It was just a poaching camp. The guards burned it down. And then in 2002, we converted it to a base camp and a patrol post. We use Itate as a launching point into the forest, and from there we conduct surveys, bonobo surveys. Now, when we first arrived in Solana, it was virtually uncharted. And I remember looking at a map and thinking, and looking at the GPS and looking at the map and with a ruler and so, trying to find what it said my coordinates were. And I said to my colleague at the time, I said, Ino Gobini, I'm sure we're on the west side of this river, but this map indicates we're on the east side of this river. This is how bad and how useless truly the maps were. So this region was really uncharted. We had to bushwhack across miles and miles of the Solana in search of the bonobo. And indeed, we found bonobos. There were actually, we learned early on that if the bonobos, and pockets of bonobos, they weren't throughout, but we realized that fairly early on that if the densities of bonobos were anything like this, that the Solana National Park was in fact a very, very important place and could possibly be the premier conservation site for the bonobo. So we stuck around. We also encountered signs of elephants, fresh signs of elephants. Solana used to be a stronghold of elephants. It had hundreds of thousands of elephants probably, and in the mid-'80s they were nearly wiped out, but we continue to find them. They're there in low densities. This is a fresh footprint and a rubbing post. And we also documented signs of human activity, which is really any sign of human activity is usually a sign of hunting. And the most common sign that we found are these snares. And snares are the indiscriminate traps that hold the leg of an animal and, until the hunter comes along. Bonobos can get their hands and feet sometimes trapped in these snares, and these snare wounds can often kill them. Poaching was so prolific in the Solana that poachers would often build permanent hunting camps, sometimes approaching the size of a village. In this particular hunting camp, there were 25 beds. You look at the number, you look at the beds, and 25 people can fit in that. Some of them even had women and children. So the end result is that we knew and were able to document that tons of bushmeat were coming out of Solana. Solana was more or less a free-for-all for hunting. Hunting was then and hunting is now the chief threat of all wildlife in not only Solana, but throughout the country. This lovely spot here is an elephant bath on the Yenge River, and at one time hundreds of elephants came there to bathe. But instead of finding live elephants, we frequently found carcasses of elephants, and this elephant did not die of a natural cause. This was probably fatal gunshot to his head. You've already heard from the world's experts about conflict ivory, so I'm not going to go into that here. Suffice it to say that this is the leading cause in Solana today of insecurity. These places are becoming very dangerous. The parks and these wildlands are dangerous places if there are elephants there. And it's gotten to the point that I can possibly say that if there is one elephant standing in the Solana National Park, there's going to be a war on wildlife. I hope that that is not true. I hope that we can stem the tide. But with the increase in ivory and the incentive for the search of ivory, especially the forest elephant, whose ivory is even more highly valued, is creating tremendous insecurity. So why so much poaching in the Solana? In 2001, this is what the guard force looked like. No uniforms, poorly trained, no equipment, 3 guns for 25 men. In contrast, this is what the poachers look like. Armed to the teeth, pirogues full of ammunition. They attack park guards. They can sometimes take and torture park guards, let them loose, and send a loud message that if you mess with us, we're going to kill you. And indeed, this is a man who was shot and he miraculously survived, and this one was not as fortunate. All this lawlessness does not lead to prosperity. And in fact, this is the opposite. if local communities who surround Solana, they are poor already. They live at a subsistence level. But if they get caught up in the drama of poaching, if they're coerced by the middlemen that frequently come there to buy food and so on, if they get coerced to do hunting, they get very, very poorly paid, sometimes only paid in terms of the share of the meat, and they fall deeper and deeper into poverty. Poachers don't build schools, and this is the thing that we have been trying to, part of the educational programs that we've been supporting. This school was abandoned because the village could not pay their teacher. So this was the scenario in 2001 when I first went to Solana, and that was still during the war. And we found bonobos. That was more or less the easy part. But how to protect these bonobos, that was going to be much, much harder. So I was joined by many, many people. It became our quest to reclaim Solana. So today Etate, our first stopping point, is a research station and a patrol post. It's manned year-round by 10 National Park guards. It's a strategic patrol post that patrols all the traffic on the Solana River. And we give these guards all the things they need to both live at Etate and the things that they require to go out on patrol, like stocks of fuel, motors, machetes, uniforms, and so on. The greatest investment, however, has been in training. And as it was very difficult for us to know our way around the Solana, it's equally difficult for the guards and impossible for the guards to know their way around Solana. They had no landmarks. They had no ability to navigate. They could only patrol the trails that in the places that they knew. So we began courses then in navigation. And just to explain what we did, this is a map with the Solana and the Yangtze rivers. This is the Solana, or the Etate surveillance area. It's just a very outline of what the region looks like. The Etate guards have to patrol, it's about 1,000 square kilometers, they have to patrol in here. Today, after this training, they can provide a map like this, where we can see, oh, the yellow stars, well, those are bonobos. The green here, those are elephants. And the red are signs of humans. So we know that with the training that they've had, we know the distribution, where important pockets of wildlife exist, and we know perhaps where we need to beef up anti-poaching patrols. Probably in this area right here, where you see the predominantly red marks. Well, is that all going to be all of the story? Okay, Gay, now you guys can produce some kind of fancy-looking maps here. Well, as donors, one thing I hope you ask is, where are the results? Does this make a difference? Does this make a difference? Well, we had in 2011, there was a large operation called Operation Bonobo, and this is where the military and the Solana Park guards joined forces and did a very large sweep through the park to reduce poaching. Was it effective? Well, the Etate guards data showed the following. This is before the operation, 6 months leading up to the operation. Here's the distribution. Let's just focus now on the green dots. Let's just focus on the elephants. This is a distribution of elephants before the operation. This is a distribution of elephants after. A threefold. But it's wonderful that the elephants came back, but it's also wonderful that the guards themselves could show us this. This is a threefold increase in elephant activity and a tenfold decrease in poaching activity. So since I've been last here to talk to you, we've more than quadrupled the patrols the patrol area. This is the Atate patrol area, and today we are sending patrols all the way, and this is thanks to WCN support and all of your support. We're now sending patrols all the way down what's called the Watsi-Kingo sector, and especially into this place down here called Dardar. It had never had patrols ever in the life of the park. So today all of this region is coming back under guard control. When I arrived, 60% of the guards were illiterate. It's very difficult to read a GPS unit and write and lead patrols and write patrol reports if you can't read or write. So there was really no choice but to start a literacy program for the guards. The guards are taught Lingala and French, and today all of the Tate guards can read a GPS and write their reports and lead patrols. So what has this resulted in? More frequent patrols which are documented. You know that where they went, you know what they found, you know where poaching hotspots occur. There's a greater rate of recovery of these snares, and there's also a greater rate of arrests. And just in the year 2014, which is not even over, we have had 24 arrests, which is really, you don't know what the before was, but there were 0 arrests, so we're up 24. And some of these arrests are extremely important, like these 2 ivory hunters that were just arrested in June. And in one haul, these men killed 8 elephants, 8 elephant tails. And with this slide, I want to make the point that of the seizures here, look at the size of this tusk. They're the size of a life jacket. At one time, the ivory coming from Solana weighed 30 pounds on average, a tusk. Today, it's 6. So, poachers don't build schools, but we did. And again, there was no choice. If we were going to have lasting conservation, we needed to also embrace the needs of the population. These children had to walk about 20 kilometers to their mother's school. So we began a program then to revitalize primary schools. We provide their books and their teacher salaries. In addition to that, we collaborated with local agronomist experts to teach methods in agriculture and to improve agriculture. And today there's upland rice growing, there are beans, there's squash, there's a variety of foods that grow, and foods and commercial products. As a result, we have developed a market between the guard force and the local community. So the food that they learned to grow and their increase in produce led to a market that the guards use today, and it basically injects $21,000 annually into these villages that border the park. This did not exist 5 years ago. This is a huge injection, a financial injection into the local community. We also have a adult literacy program there too for the adults. Most of these are women. But my favorite community outreach program is with the Scouts, their way of saying scouts. The Scouts come to Atate, and this is a field day for children where the school groups come, and they have programs that are given entirely by the guards. And the guards teach them about what it's like to be a guard, what the animals do. And where this is Bunda showing the children where bonobo nests are, and they're having a little game here finding bonobo nests. Where this photo, though, was taken is 5 miles from where these children grew up. This is their first encounter with a bonobo nest. It's pretty amazing. So bonobos were wiped out of their local community in elephants for probably at least a generation. And so we are trying to give them an opportunity to come and value these creatures. The end result after these years is we know at least the Tate surveillance area probably harbors about 1,000 bonobos in its 1,000 square kilometer surface. This whole region that I showed you earlier, we estimate that there are about 5,000 bonobos there. So this Watsi-Kingo sector has a sizable bonobo population, but we did not know what the status of elephants was. And where this picture was taken, in 2011, this was completely overrun with poachers. You could not go there. Guards could not go there for fear of their life. This is an elephant buy where elephants come to congregate. When Operation Bonobo came in, that's when we could finally go back. But we had no sense of how many elephants were there. So we installed camera traps like many other organizations that you'll see are doing. And we left these traps up for 2 weeks and went back and started looking at all the images and one after another, and no elephant, no elephant, no elephant, nothing, nothing, nothing. But on the 1,001st photo, this is the first time in 2012 that I have seen the elephants in my backyard. And you can't imagine the joy. And when I showed this picture at a conference in Kinshasa, and when I showed the park people this picture, these pictures and all the maps and things, they had the same reaction. I just want you to know that too. So we've come full circle. What began as a quest to find bonobos in the Solana National Park, we found them. And that evolved then to a program to preserve them in this fantastic forest that wouldn't be there if it weren't for the elephant, the grand agriculturalist who eats and disperses seeds. And our future depends on the continuation of this forest, as well as these indigenous people could not exist if it weren't for this forest. So we see all of these connections, and the catalyst for me has been the bonobo. Thank you.